All right, folks. One way to think about country music is music with connections to a certain place or country, or at least with ideas about a certain kind of place. So when you think of country and country music, what sorts of images and places, situations, and interactions and sounds come to mind for you? In this course, we're going to consider a variety of musics that aren't always called country, but which have significant connections to places. As we start, I think it's going to be useful to think about another category, world music. So this term was coined by music industry executives in the 1980s to create a record shop category for musical artists who are not Euro-American. The term identifies sounds and artists that are ethnic and different in some sort of way, implying that the consumers of that world music were normal and not ethnic in a way. Right? It's weird, right? That this term implies that we ourselves aren't part of the world if we're part of this consuming Euro-American set. The category is slippery, and it's less commonly used now than it once was, as our world is much more globalized and connected than it was 40 years ago. Our understandings of how ecology works, that we're deeply interdependent with other species, environments, and substances, and people, and the recent experience of the COVID-19 pandemic has showed us that our efforts to separate ourselves are seldom successful. Still, the ideas of a ghettoized world music in our imagination persists as a way of sorting out us from them. In this class, I seek to challenge this kind of division as we travel the world virtually. I hope that we can make comparisons and contrasts that emphasize a commonly shared humanity. Now, seeking to challenge the exclusive connections of sound and people to place, I've drawn from Douglas Reichert Powell's critical regionalism project. As we deal with country music as a phenomenon that is often defined by rootedness in place, I hope we will also consider it as a rich, complicated, and dynamic construct rather than a static, stable, somehow geophysical entity. Sociologist Richard Peterson has shown in his 1997 book that the early country music industry fabricated different senses of authenticity. An attribution of authenticity proposes a connection to something somehow real, a similar sort of process to that connection to place. Peterson encourages us to focus on the process of authenticity claims, their context, who is involved, and why. Powell's critical regionalism is similarly focused on processes. The common thread, he says, through this emerging strand of scholarship is a shifting of emphasis away from the products of regional culture, the definitions of region, shifting instead to the processes by which ideas about regions come into being and become influential. Instead of asking whether a particular version of region is valid or invalid, authentic or not, this new regional scholarship asks whose interests are served by any given version of region.